Hi, my name is LLevy, and welcome to my data overview presentation for the algebra outcomes for the 9th grade class for Alexander High School. The purpose of this data overview and this meeting is to review, identify, and collaborate on areas of weakness, strength, and performance gaps displayed in the 9th grade algebra curriculum student outcomes. Through the use of data attained from standardized assessments during the years 2013 to 2015 end of course test. Additionally, we'll be reviewing some of the school's demographics to convey our story, highlight some of the strengths, and develop an action plan for targeted improvement in the weakest areas, in addition to a plan to address the gaps within socioeconomics groups. Let's do a quick snapshot of who we are. Alexander High School's overall performance is higher than 49% of the school in the state and lower than its district. Its students' academic growth is higher than 24% of the schools in the state, but again, lower than the district. Our four-year graduation rate is at 89.7%, which is higher than 74% of the high schools in the state, and it's similar to our district record. 55% of the graduates are college ready. Our total enrollment for students in 2015 was 1,729 students. In 2015, there were 482 ninth graders at Alexander High School. 444 of those students took the coordinate algebra end of course exam, and 81 were an accelerated coordinate algebra course. 223 of those students had both the coordinate algebra course and the support lab for additional instruction. There were no students identified as ELL. There were 28 students with disabilities, and 123 met free and reduced lunch. Here's another visual makeup of the student body. Up in this corner, you can see the student body in relationship to the percent of students that are in the 9th grade. Here, I've split the graph into subgroup genders, and 47% were female, 53% were male, about a 50-50. Subgroups, students with disabilities and economically disadvantaged, make up about 1/3 of the 9th grade population. 50% of the students at Alexander in the 9th grade class are white. The other 50% is a makeup of ethnic minority groups. In the last 3 years, it should be noted that the 9th grade body of students has increased by more than 22%. The state of Georgia has undergone many math curriculum changes over the past 5 years. In 2012, the state began to phase out a district choice that integrated a math curriculum known as a blended math called Math 1, 2, 3, and 4, a course which blended algebra, geometry, and statistics throughout the units. In 2013 to 2014, the Douglas County school system switched over to coordinate algebra using the Common Core Georgia Performance Standards while phasing out the integrated math curriculum. In 2015, the state offered districts the opportunity to again switch to the Georgia Standards of Excellence, which is now being called Algebra 1. Note that as a result of some of these changes, there is some skewing in the data, as in the spring of 2013, 40 of the students at Alexander High School took the Math 1 end of course as opposed to the coordinate algebra end of course. Those results are not included in the data for the school level. Let's review if there's actually a need for change. And looking at the graph, it appears that our outcomes are actually decreasing and getting better, when in reality, the state of Georgia went from a 3-tiered criterion to a 4-tiered. So in this graph here, what I've done is I've combined the beginning learners along with the developing learners. In combining them, you would see that our actual scores have gone down since the outcomes of the end of course assessments using the Georgia Standards of Excellence criterion. In 2014, when the DOE announced a change to the standardized testing system, specifically the addition of open-ended questions and writing components to provide students with an opportunity to demonstrate mastery of these standards, they also changed the criterions for proficiency. So now areas proficient and distinguished are considered the equivalent of meets and exceeds for data comparison. The new standards have new score criterion with 4 categories: beginning learner, developing learner, proficient learner, and distinguished learner. Georgia felt compelled to modify the curriculum to help bridge gaps and help more students meet performance standards. For those meeting the developing learner, it's anywhere from around a 67 to 70 something. So even though they're developing, they still have not all met proficiency. In this graph here, I'm providing a visual so that you can see, in looking from left to right, the years 2013 to 2014 and then on to 2015, where the different strands ran. I provided this as a visual, but you'll see in the 2015, the areas in red are the distinguished areas. For the results for this data overview, what I've done is I've combined the beginning and developing learners and put those still as the does not meet proficiency level, whereas those are proficient and distinguished would be parallel to meets and exceeds. Here I'm showing the difference in the percent between does not meet and at or above at the state, the district, and the school level based upon the graphs that I showed in the previous slide for the years 2013 to 2015. As you can see, the gap has actually gotten bigger over the years. Now we're going to start digging a little bit deeper, and we're going to start looking at some of the achievement gaps, or to see if there's gaps based upon socioeconomic or minority levels. Georgia went from the 3 achievement levels to 4 in 2015. Here I've done a state comparison, but I've also bridged it out between ethnicity and race. If you were to look and you were to try to build a trend going from the left to the right and a line, you would see that that line would actually be decreasing. Overall, the state saw a decline of about 4% of students not meeting proficiency from 2013 to 2014 across all demographic subgroups, ethnicity, race, but an increase amongst all of about 5% from 2014 to 2015. Disproportionately, however, those of minority subgroups on average had 20% of students that did not meet proficiency across all 3 years. The largest gap seen all 3 years was between Black and African American and whites, almost a 30% gap each year respectively. Now we're going to do some digging at the district level. So here you've got the same graphs, but instead of comparing them at the state level, now I'm going down to the district level. Again, if you were to look for a line trend from left to right, you'll see a decrease. After doing some data digging, I was able to see that the district saw a decline in percent of students not meeting proficiency from 2013 to 2014, about 10% across all demographic subgroups, ethnicity and race, but an increase amongst all from 2014 to 2015 of about 12%. Disproportionately, however, those of minority subgroups on average had about 20% per students that did not meet proficiency across all 3 years. The largest gap, again, across all 3 years was between Black African Americans and whites, again, about a 30% gap, respectively. So how did Alexander compare? In comparison, we saw a decrease in the percent of students not meeting proficiency from 2013 to 2014, about 10% across all demographic subgroups, ethnicity, race, but an increase amongst blacks and African Americans and whites of about 15%, and then another decrease between Hispanics and multiracial students of about 15%. On average, all minority subgroups had about a 12% larger group of students who did not meet proficiency. The largest gap all 3 years was between Black African Americans and whites, almost a 30% gap each year respectively. I also did some comparisons when I was digging down into the data with some other students, specifically students with disabilities versus students without disabilities. I would have liked to have been able to separate those groups even more so, to do students with disabilities and then do it by ethnicity and race, but I was not able to obtain the data. But based upon what I was able to get, there was a decline of the students with disabilities and the students without disabilities over the course of the years. However, there was a tremendous gap between the students with disabilities and the students without, as you'll see in the next slide. So let's talk about our strengths. The Hispanic and multiracial subgroups saw decreases each year for a total of 11% for Hispanics and 13% for multiracial students from 2013 to 2015. That's a decrease in students not meeting the standards. If anything, they actually pulled them up. There's increased use of literacy skills in the math resource classes, and it appears that those resource skills have benefited many students, as evidenced by the increase in students at or above average amongst the two subgroups. Alexander also saw a large increase in their student population from 2013 to 2015. And even though they saw tremendous growth by about 25% of the students, the scores remained on average consistently. Let's address some of the weaknesses. In trying to address the weakness areas that we have, I have some questions that I'd like to propose for the data team. The first step to addressing the gaps and or areas of weakness is identifying not just where they're occurring, but more importantly, why there are weaknesses. Are we not delivering instructionally at the same rate in all the classes? Are there issues with access to technology? Have there been change in the dynamics of the classroom? So we need to look into some of these other areas. Additionally, how can we address the differentials in access to effective instructions? Are students within the subgroups in the same class? Are their white peers experiencing the same type of instructional delivery? So we need to look at, again, what's happening in the different classes and maybe seeing if we can move the students around so that there's a blend of the students in each class. Why are the minority subgroups and students with disabilities consistently the lowest in our school? So we need to look at some of the instructional deliveries, see if we're doing enough differentiated type instruction, maybe look at personal type models or collaborative groups to help some of the kids with ELL. And where do we go for guidance? What schools have been successful and what are they doing? We need to look at that as well. So where do we start, guys? Opportunities to learn remains one of the best predictors of student learning. Differentials in learning outcomes are not a result of inclusion in any demographic group, but rather are significantly a function of the disparities in opportunities that different groups of learners have with respect to access to grade level or even more advanced or rigorous curriculum, teacher expectations for students, and beliefs about their potential for success. Establishment of learning opportunities include personalized learning centers, use of manipulatives, development of tasks that are authentic and meaningful, and use of technology games such as Minecraft to enhance student learning is where we need to begin. And on a final note, I'd like to leave with some 5 thoughts about things to be thinking about and coming together to brainstorm and come up with some ideas that we can use in the classroom. First, we need to offer high-level content to all students, possibly personalized learning centers. We also need to get people to dump the myth about people being gifted in math or being not gifted in math. We need to change that fixed mindset to a growth mindset. We also need to encourage students to think deeply about mathematics. Students achieve higher when they are exposed to some type of deep understanding using STEM or real-life activities. Also, we need to teach students to work together. Collaboration tends to increase student engagement, and it also gets them to kind of bounce off of each other and think about the things that they're trying to do with the math. Finally, give minority students and students with disabilities additional encouragement to learn math and science. Expose them to virtual worlds using STEM, different types of research ideas, maybe even bringing in some guest speakers. Thank you guys for coming.